nature nut. I'm not afraid to admit I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Well, hello there, nature nuts. Today we're going to have a show of a different color. It's going to be a very colorful show, in fact. And I'm going to talk about the great color masters in nature. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking about chameleon lizards. Lizards in the family Chameleontidae. Lizards, very strange lizards from places like Africa and Madagascar. And of course, these lizards are most famous for their ability to change colors. But to tell you the truth, that's not the thing I find most fascinating about them. The things that I find interesting about chameleons are things other than that color change business. Things like, well, just the way they're built. I mean, have a look. This is Camila the chameleon. That's a fairly cute name. And Camila the chameleon is a beautiful, lovely, adult female panther chameleon. By the way, Camila is currently walking around on Wartquo, my one and only houseplant, a begonia. She was walking on Wartquo, a begonia that I've had since 1980. Now where are you going? You're walking on my good name. Oh well. I welcome that. Would you like to be inspected under the microscope? They're so weird. They're so weird. I've got to talk about chameleons. I was going to talk about begonias, but you can't talk about begonias when there's a chameleon in the room. Acorn the begonia boy, it just doesn't cut it. Okay, come on, back to the begonia here. Back. Have you ever noticed how weird the eyes of chameleons are? I mean, they're really, really weird. I can't think of another animal on this planet that has weirder eyes than a chameleon. And there's a reason that they're weird. For one thing, they're fairly large eyes. They might not look like big eyes, but they are. They're large eyes and they're set in large sockets. And what you're mostly seeing when you see that weird little turret that surrounds the eye is the eyelids that are fused together, and all that they allow to show through is the pupil of the eye, the part that would be black in our eyes. So that's strange. Even though their eyelids are fused together, by the way, they can close their eyes at night when they sleep, and they do sleep just like you or me. They're daytime critters. The eyelids are there for protection of the eyes, and presumably chameleons need to protect their eyes for some reason. Maybe they bump into branches or bugs otherwise. I don't know. I find their eyes especially weird, though, when a chameleon is looking in two different directions at the same time, which they almost always are doing. It's very, very strange. If I was a chameleon, I would be able to look down at my left foot with this eye, and let's say over around my right shoulder with that eye, and it wouldn't bother me. My mind would be able to comprehend those two images. You know, who knows what's going on in the back of a chameleon's head? Do they just see one big swirling mass, or do they have two little mental television screens in the back there? Nobody knows, because nobody can get inside the head of a chameleon, but we do know that a lot of what they're looking for is motion, is bugs. And when they see a bug, then finally both eyes come together and they look in the same direction. And when your eyes are looking in the same direction and your eyes are looking straight forward, then you can get depth perception and you can tell how far away the bug is. And that's when the chameleon sneaks up on its prey and zaps it. Like that. Picture the tongue going way further. It's as far as my tongue goes. Like that. I am not a chameleon, despite this clever disguise. There are about 85 species of chameleons, found primarily in Africa and Madagascar. about you, but I'm very excited to be here now, catching up on the new trends in the fashion world of chameleons.
What?
The fashion world of chameleons and the new trends.
Beautiful.
I've always liked the way different sorts of chameleons have different shapes of skull.
What is with the three things? What is
The
that?
three horns. There've always been three horns in the male, Jackson. It's something we grew up with. We've seen it for a long time.
I hate those.
I don't like the horns.
But we grew up with that.
It's quite classic.
I love it.
It's timeless. Let's face facts. You got it. It's so nice to see these high cast skulls on the veiled chameleon.
What is with the eye thing?
The eye turrets. This is what they've called the eye turrets. In a way, it's playful.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little pushy. Yeah, but
You find it pushy?
But I can't tell if he's looking at me.
I don't. He could be looking at either one of us or both.
Now, you see, this one is called the panther.
Yes,
The panther.
with the bump on the nose. Just a bump.
Classic. Classic.
It transcends both time and gender, in my opinion.
It's a bit medieval, though, yeah?
Do you think so?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's more classic.
I find it almost spiral.
Elliptical.
Elliptical. But what do you think of the feet? I mean, I don't think the feet can change ever.
I hate them. I don't like how they,
But they have to be this way. Otherwise, how would we know? How would they be chameleons without the feet? But it's a springtime thing as well.
I suppose so. Well, if we were in Paris, it would be much more springy and a little bit more playful.
But we're not in Paris. And that was spectacular. It really was.
What?
And the music's good this year, too.
Beautiful.
All right, well, now let's talk about feet. You and I, we're used to having human feet, and human feet seem normal to us. But think about it, human feet are really nothing like any other sort of animal foot than you can think of, are they? And they're especially nothing like lizard feet. Most lizards have much longer toes, and the big toe juts out at an angle compared to the other toes in the foot. Very typical sort of configuration, nothing like a human foot. Of course, they have the same bones, the same muscles, the same basic structure that we do, and that structure is modified even more in a chameleon. You think we've got weird feet? Chameleon have super weird feet. I mean, the weirdest feet I can think of. And that's partly because they use their feet to walk along branches, mostly horizontal branches, and they have to grip those branches very tightly. Now, an animal like a monkey would grip the branch with a hand and a foot, very much like our hands, with the thumb grabbing on one side and the fingers on the other. But a chameleon does much better. Why have one digit on one side of the branch and 4 on the other when you can have 2 on one side and 3 on the other? They have a gap about there between the toes on the hind feet, and then the toes are all fused together with a big sheath of skin. It provides a very strong grip, a vice-like grip. The branch, once it's been grabbed, is not going to slip out of their grip. Even if I had feet like that, and boy, would that be fun if I had feet like that. The soles of my feet are relatively smooth, and they're also, between you and me, they're a little bit sweaty. So I would probably just slip right off the branch. Just go whoop and turn over to the side. A chameleon doesn't do that because they have little tiny hairs, almost like Velcro hairs, on the bottom of their feet, and they use those to grip the branch as well. The hind legs are about the same length as the front legs, which also makes sense for something that crawls along branches. And the front feet are much like the hind feet, except that the gap is here instead of there. So they have this kind of a configuration. It's familiar looking thing, isn't it? It's kind of like Star Trek. Live long and prosper, and don't fall off the branch. The word chameleon means ground lion, despite the fact that they live in trees and look like dinosaurs. Happy birthday to Phil. There you go. Phil the chameleon is now 6 months old. That's why there are 4 candles on this birthday cake. But chameleons can't count, so it's okay. Chameleons also don't care about birthday parties. In fact, while I'm helping my buddy Aaron celebrate Phil's birthday, and Phil's off doing his own thing, getting a little birthday lunch, couple of extra mealworms, extra crickets. And when you think about it, the way chameleons eat is a really, really weird thing, isn't it? It's almost like a party favor. Shoots out of your mouth, catches your food, and brings it back to you. That's really weird. You ever think about how weird that is? I mean, a young chameleon has a tongue that is actually longer than the rest of its body. A chameleon's tongue is a lot like anybody else's tongue. It's a lot like a human tongue. But there are some really interesting differences. For one thing, it's got a bone right in the middle of its tongue, the hyoid bone. We don't have a hyoid bone. But that's kind of cool, an extra support bone for the tongue. You ever feel like your tongue's a bit weak? You could use a nice little bit of support in there. They've got it. And the way that it shoots out of the mouth, there are circular muscles around that hyoid bone, and when they constrict, it goes from being a short, fat thing to a long, skinny thing. And at the end of the tongue, there's a thickening shaped a bit like a baseball bat. And on the very tip of the tongue, there's a little tiny thing that's kind of like a baseball glove. And it's sticky. It's covered with sticky, oozy stuff that comes from glands at the end of the tongue. That sticks to the bug, and then the tongue comes back into the mouth when the muscles relax, and the lizard actually chews up the bug. It's got little teeth, and it does a lot more chewing than most lizards do, and then swallows it. Wouldn't it be weird if you actually had to eat the birthday cake with the party favor? I think I got some. It is always foolish for a man to attempt to improve upon nature. I'll use a fork. Thank you. You know, one of the things that's, well, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing about chameleons is the life cycle. In some ways, they're kind of like, well, they're like bugs. They go through one generation every year. The female lays the eggs hatch, and within a year, the little baby chameleons are full size. And in the wild, of course, most of those animals would die when they're just over a year old. The good thing is, in captivity, many of them will go through a second or a third or even a fourth year. I'm thinking mostly about the veiled chameleon here, the most popular one in pet stores now. That's the one where you go in the pet store and you see these little tiny chameleons fit right on your finger. And they're really expensive. They're like 75 or $100 or more. But that's okay because they'll grow to be really big within a single year. And the pet store wants to sell them when they're little so that you have to pay for the crickets. I think they're so cute. Little baby chameleons are the cutest things. Wonderful lizards. It's so good that the veiled chameleon is being easily bred in captivity. Unlike other chameleons like the Madagascan giant chameleon. Whew. That one is a challenge. Leave that one alone unless you're a real expert. So the cycles continue on, the seasons spin, and there will be chameleons for all of perpetuity. Gives you a weird feeling in the tummy just thinking about it. Makes you feel kind of queasy, doesn't it? Before the days of captive-bred chameleons, most pet chameleons died because of roundworm parasites. Your eyes are like two little rubber volcanoes that swivel so sweetly when you look at me, and your lips are delightfully scaly and dry. just as cute and enticing as your weird little feet. You're so lovely and young, a beauty unsung, and I just love that thing that you do with your tongue. You do with your tongue when you get it unslung. It's as long as your body and twice as much fun. When you grin in the gills, it fills me with thrills. Those blue spots on your back make me want to attack, but I'll try not to bite till the time is just right. Oh, your brown splotchy ribcage looks great in this light. Your ribcage so fine, and your Acorn spine. You're a vision of glamour, an enchantress divine. Oh, how happy we'd be if we shared the same tree, romantically dining on birds and on bees. Just remember to warn me before you go sot. It's a pain when our tongues get tied up in a knot. Tied up with your pride, oh what a wild ride. Don't try to slow till we get you untied. Your eyes are like two little rubber volcanoes that swivel so sweetly when you look at me. And your lips are delightfully scaly and dry, just as cute and enticing as your weird little feet. You're so lovely and young, a beauty unsung, and I just love that thing that you do with your tongue. A beauty so young, lovely unsung, and I just love that thing that you do with your tongue. Man, you know, it's not easy to find a good plastic Jackson's three-horned chameleon. Look at how well he fits in to the parade of Mesozoic life. I'm very proud of my plastic dinosaur collection. The main thing it does is it makes you think, doesn't it? It makes you think about weird things like why a Jackson's three-horned chameleon looks so much like a Triceratops, one of the most famous dinosaurs of all. Well, that's actually a pretty good question. So why don't we examine the answer in a little more detail? Obviously, the most striking similarity has to do with the fact that they both have three horns on the face. The horns are a little bit different in structure. Certainly on the dinosaur there was a bone core and then a sheath over top of that. On the chameleons they have this weird ringed structure, but still there's one horn above each eye and then there's a horn coming off the snoot. And they're used in the chameleons to fight with other chameleons, other male chameleons, for possession of territory and for access to potential mates. There's evidence that Triceratops used their horns to fight with each other as well, and I'm sure that they would have used them for defense too, but mostly they would have used their horns to poke each other, because life as a Triceratops was complicated, and you needed to establish yourself in the dinosaurian world, because we all know that the dinosaurian world was a very difficult time and a very difficult world to live in indeed. So that's the simple answer of why they look the same. But what about the fact that they both also have a little bit of a frill, bony frill in behind the horns over the neck? It's much more pronounced in Triceratops and some of its other dinosaur relatives. I'll just bring Chasmosaurus around for comparison. Look at the frill on Chasmosaurus. Wow, very impressive. Not so big on the horns, but big on the frill. The Jackson's chameleon also has a little bit of a frill, and in dinosaurs it's a subject of a lot of discussion. Some people think it was there to protect the neck vertebrae from attacks from things like Tyrannosaurus Rex. Didn't get his neck, didn't get a meal. Some people think it was there for muscle attachment, that there should be a great huge hump of muscles over that frill. And other people think that it was primarily a display thing to make the head look bigger, so the dinosaur looks scarier to its opponents. And certainly on a chameleon it would serve a lot of those same functions, except at a much smaller scale. Remember, a Triceratops is a gigantic creature, probably weighed a couple of tons. A Jackson's chameleon weighs as much as a sandwich. But still, we have two animals separated in time by about 65 million years, separated in also in their scale and in the size of their body, but they look remarkably alike, and that is a really cool thing. That's part of what we call convergence, where two critters come to look very much the same, and they're not related closely at all. Convergent, or homoplasy, that's the technical word. There's a word nobody will understand if you use it in everyday conversation. My, what striking homoplasy. The chameleon story, it spans the entire globe, almost anywhere you place your finger, except here, there's part of the chameleon story. Did you know, for example, that the Hawaiian Islands figure prominently in the tale of how chameleons wound up in captivity in North America? The story is this, it's really quite interesting. Way back here in Central Africa, the Jackson's chameleon, the three-horned chameleon, is native. They were taken from the wild, imported to Hawaii, and sold as pets. Some of them got out. They established wild populations, feral populations, in some of the high country areas on Oahu and Maui. And it is those Hawaiian Jackson's chameleons that have been appearing in pet stores in North America for the last 20 years, along with veiled chameleons from Yemen and other sorts of chameleons like that. Isn't that amazing? And that's how we wind up having chameleons right here, where I am standing right now, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, a beautiful place where we will dress the way we please. Thank you. There you go, Phil. Another perfect checkup. You know, there's no better feeling as a lizard owner than to have a happy, healthy lizard. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I probably wouldn't have made this show because chameleons did so poorly in captivity. They only would live a few months, there were tremendous problems with parasites, and as well, we just didn't know how to look after them. Now things are much better, but only for a few species of chameleons, like the veiled chameleon. The veiled chameleon is now being bred in captivity in large numbers, so you can get a healthy little baby chameleon with no parasites that was born in captivity, and then you don't have to feel guilty about chameleons being taken from the wild as well. And then you can set it up in just the right sort of enclosure. This is Aaron's setup for Phil the chameleon, and as you can see, it's a screen cage, not an aquarium, so the animal gets enough ventilation. There's a heat lamp on top, as well as a special reptile fluorescent bulb that gives the lizard enough UV light to properly synthesize vitamins, and a drip watering system so that water is continually dripping down onto the vegetation. They're real plants in pots, and that's how chameleons recognize water. They don't drink from a bowl, but they'll drink little drops off wet leaves. Phil should lead a happy, healthy life, and if he's lucky, he might live 5 years or more. They don't live a long time, but you want their life to be good. So, if you have a pet chameleon, they're not a simple lizard. They're not like a leopard gecko. It's a big commitment. You got to be ready for that. Me, I don't mind making a big commitment to a lizard. That's because I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. So we'll see you again soon. Say goodbye to Phil. Bye, Phil. Bye, Phil. Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.